Jed Sundwall, Executive Director of Radiant Earth. It's a privilege to have you on the Geospatial Index.
Oh, it's the privilege is mine. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we're going to
Uh,
start big. What are a couple of examples of global challenges?
Pandemic response. I an easy answer is like climate change. Actually don't like talking about climate that much. You have to these days, but like because climate is so broad, it sort of touches everything. So I'd like to be a bit more specific. And things that are related to climate change are food security, uh, migrating populations, conflict that comes from changing weather patterns or calamitous events and things like that. Um, Also supply chain management. So there's all sorts of interesting stuff being done to manage our global supply chain. So these are all global challenges that require cooperation at what I like to say at a species level or a planetary scale.
Excellent. Okay, we've got a segue then to the next one. So, what are some examples of how collaboration is necessary to address these global challenges?
So, I mean, one that's sort of really just top of mind for me these days, largely because of some work that we did at Radiant Earth last year, and that we're hoping to continue this year with the tailored geospatial engine, has been around like understanding field boundaries and agricultural supply chains. So, uh, there's a sort of broad understanding that we a lot of emissions occur from agriculture, and agricultural supply chains impact so many people's lives in so many different ways. We want to get a handle on them. We want to understand uh, where food comes from, so that we can mitigate the impacts on the environment or on human rights and things like that that are associated with these supply chains. And there's a regulation, the EU deforestation regulation that is it's been postponed, but it's at some point, if you want to sell agricultural goods or goods that include a number of commodities in Europe, you need to verify that those goods have come from land that wasn't deforested or contributed to deforestation. This is insane. I mean, I love it. I'm not like mad about them doing this, but it's like, what is a forest? So you're gonna have to like have people be like, hey, this is a good. It contains wood or palm oil or something like that from this area. And do we all agree that it really came from this part of the planet? And do we all agree that this part of the planet is or was a forest or not? Um, that
Is
that's
someone
really hard to
finally,
do.
it sounds like someone's finally going to, or at least a large government body is finally making our industry put to use the Landsat archive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's that it. Satellite imagery is an obvious source of data for this kind of thing, but it's this is going to require a lot of work across many different countries, many different cultures to agree on like what are we talking about when we're talking about forests, or or deforestation. Um, these things are, I think they're important, obviously, but they're not easy. Like this kind of cooperation is really hard to pull off. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. And I think it's a generational thing. I don't think it's going to be easy at all. I think it's going to take many years for us to figure
Yeah.
this out.
So I feel like half my job here across all these episodes I'm doing is just to highlight threads that are common across episodes. So we've had
Yeah.
Taylor Geospatial Institute on.
Hmm.
Nadine Alamay mentioned the Field Boundaries Challenge. So it's
Oh,
really
good.
nice to continue that theme with you and see how that's percolating through the industry in another organization. And this new EU legislation to prove that deforestation wasn't involved in agriculture was raised in the episode with Aya Data. We had a really nice discussion with
Okay.
Anthony Iffy, which was a fantastic episode. Great. Okay, so we're setting the scene with some of these global challenges and how collaboration is necessary to address them. That's great. So another aspect of why these are challenges is shared access to data, according to you guys. So could you
Right.
fill us in on that?
Yeah. I mean, so but we could just keep using EODR as an example, just because again, it's top of mind. It's a really interesting example. So suddenly we have to, or people who are selling goods in Europe have to gather a bunch of data about, you know, to the down to like what species of wood is contained in a certain product. Um, when it was harvested, where it came from, et cetera, et cetera. How are they going to send that information? Is it in a spreadsheet? Like, is it a CSV? Like, do they need to be sending shape files? Like, they don't answer these questions.
I
Like the
prefer CAD
regulations.
files.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like that's the thing. It's sort of like no, they're like actually we want a PDF. We want millions of PDFs to be emailed to an address or something like that.
Yes,
Like
perfect.
it's not specified in the policy, like really how this gets done. And this is the kind of thing that sort of like feels quotidian, but it is extremely important. And it's something that sort of I wouldn't say I sort of want to say it irks me a little bit, but it does irk me. But I also kind of I get it. I understand why policymakers don't think enough about these things, but they really need to. And I think what makes me optimistic, I think the good thing about this is that like the internet is and the web has proven to be pretty good at slinging massive volumes of data around, finding practical, useful standards for sharing huge volumes of data. And so the community will figure this out. But I see it's an important role that we play at Radiant, and specifically through our work with the Cloud Native Geospatial Forum to facilitate these conversations and elevate them.
Okay, good. So we've got
Yeah.
a segue then onto the next one, which is the applications or how this organization is addressing these challenges and making it easier to collaborate and share data. So there's a
Yeah.
couple of services I have seen. Source Cooperative. So how does
Yeah.
Source Cooperative help with collaboration and data sharing?
Yeah. So my background, I mean, I guess like the longest job I've ever had was at AWS. So I built the open data team there. As part of that work, we also created a thing called the Amazon Sustainability Data Initiative. And the truth about my story there is it was one of actually simultaneously like very tight constraints and sort of like infinite capacity, in the sense that like what I figured out what to do at AWS was how to give out free S3 to organizations that had data they wanted to share openly, and figured out how to sort of build a program that we could do that scalably and bring in lots of people who had data that they wanted to share. But all we could offer was free S3. That was it. So I didn't have engineering resources. We couldn't write applications. We couldn't write code. And so that forced us to think like, well, how far can you get with just object storage, just putting files in S3? How far can we push this? And we found like really far, like basically like so many, if not most, data sharing applications or needs are solved by just putting files in an object store, or objects in an object store, and being thoughtful about how you name them, how you provide metadata for them, and provide documentation. If you can do that, you can go really far. You can make your data available in an extremely flexible way that allows a lot of research and interesting things to happen. The problem, though, for still a lot of researchers and people in our community, well, people all over the world, is that they should never log into AWS or any cloud provider. Like these are power tools. I sort of compare them to like a table saw. Like you really don't want to use one unless you really know what you're doing. You can get surprised by scary bills and things like that. So this is all to say what Source Cooperative is object storage for data sharing. It's a utility that allows people to benefit from object storage, but without actually using AWS, where you don't have to worry about scary bandwidth stuff. You don't have to worry about all the security stuff. Our assumption is like, if you have a bunch of stuff that you want to put on an object store and share via the web, Source is you want that to be the best way for people to do that.
Okay, so applied to, for example, a technologically forward farm, say in Tanzania, that an organization like Aya Data may have used its drones to capture the boundaries of the fields and verify that there's no cut down forest nearby. How would this farmer use something like Source Cooperative to prove to the EU and the states within it that it's okay, that they're not breaking the law to buy their products?
Yeah. Okay. This is great. So yeah, actually, it's funny. I typically don't think of farmers as customers, but why not? If they're like you said, they're.
Am I right to think that it is the farmers that will have to, or is there a middleman between the farmer and the supermarket, Lidl or Aldi or whatever?
Who knows? I mean, yeah, that's the thing. I do think a pretty robust data supply chain is going to emerge to do this. So, but yeah, but this is an interesting example. Let's just say you have somebody who's flown a drone and they care about this. So presumably they're going to produce some TIFFs, some raster data. That just you can put those in Source Cooperative. You can put a stack catalog adjacent to those. You can put. We have another. So what we worked on with Taylor's Geospatial Engine was a metadata standard for field boundaries, or a spec that we call FBOA. That is very stacky. So you can say like, hey, here are polygons. Like here's the information about the field boundaries and everything like that. The one thing about Source that way to describe it, it's a utility for trusted individuals and organizations to publish data. So we're not quite there yet. Source is still sort of very much in beta. We've got a lot of work to do this year. But one thing about it is I really want people to be able to assert and see at the object level and say like, oh, here's a collection of TIFFs supposedly from this farm. Because we're a nonprofit, we're not just trying to like drive tons of users and just bring people on without verifying them. Like we actually really want to be able to verify that this data came from this farm. This person uploaded it on this day. It has this checksum or some hash so that people know like the integrity of the data. We really much want it to be a place where people can assert like really somewhat verifiable or more trusted records of data from sensors.
Okay,
I
yeah.
hope that makes sense.
I'm starting to get a feel for how this could work. It's also exciting, honestly, to hear about this. It's a blue ocean type scenario, actually, and it's just interesting to see how an entrepreneur or an organization and yourself with a decent background with a lot of depth to do with sharing data approaches this challenge. Okay, so another initiative that I'm aware of is Cloud Native Geospatial Forum. So is this also an effort to do with collaboration and data sharing?
It is. So, if you think of Source as kind of like it's a utility, it's a service people can use. Cloud Native Geo is where we bring people together to figure out like, well, how should we be doing this? So sort of what I said before, I'm pretty convinced that object storage is very powerful, very beneficial. But all those things that I mentioned, like, what do you name the files? What kind of metadata should you provide? What are the formats that like really work really well? That's something that, the cloud's still pretty new. Like it feels like it's the normal thing now, but it's still relatively new. There's a lot of updating of code and, pipelines and everything like that and training that to be done. There's a really great, awesome, I mean, as you know, like the geospatial community is incredibly generous and open and collaborative. And so we just keep finding like if we just give people a venue to come together and work these issues out, they'll come together and do it. And so we have a great community that does that stuff. And that's what we do. That's what we do. Yeah. More webinars. We did sorry.
Yeah, so I was going to say I was aware of the webinars. I think they were mid-November because that's actually when my family migrated actually to Atlanta, and I think I was just dead tired from the flight and I didn't attend. But how are there recordings of that event? Is that a way that you serve the community?
There are, in fact, I mean, they are being published today. The day that we're recording, like right now, we're releasing those videos. They've finally been uploaded to YouTube and are available, so you can include them in the show notes.
That's excellent. All right, I'll get to watching as part of editing this. I've also seen a few sort of leading lights, if you like, in the industry, like Linda Stevens, I think Matt Forrest, I think Qiusheng Wu, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. So a number of people who are well known on geospatial, if you like, social media, appear to have endorsed the effort. So what is the contribution that those kind of people make? What about institutions like universities? How is the collaboration happening, and what's bubbling up from this?
Right. So Linda, we've employed, as a contractor. We hire as a contractor. She's helped us with a ton of work. We've loved working with her. And then Qiusheng, Matt Forrest, many others we have 12 people on what we call our editorial board for Cloud Native Geo. So we use them for guidance on like, who should we have speaking on X, Y, or Z topics. We also have a process that we haven't published yet, so working it out, but like we want them to actually review blog posts that people from the community can submit to the Cloud Native Geo blog. one of our ambitions with this with the website for cloudnativegeo.org is like no cookie waivers, no pop-ups, just like no nonsense. Like you will come here and get great information about these topics if you're interested in them. We've got a post from Kyle Barron about GeoParquet that's very popular. And I really want people to be able to Google. They hear about GeoParquet, they're like, "What's this thing with GeoParquet?" They Google it. Hopefully, we show up in the results. And over time, they're like, "Oh, that's cloudnativegeo.org. I know if I click on that, I'm going to get something really good that's educational that will not start spamming me and like, shut my browser down with stupid JavaScript stuff and cookies and everything." Like, I think we can do that. So the goal is to like have people on the editorial board in our community help us source and vet high quality content that we can make available for free to grow our community and provide educational resources for people. But that's just like the website. And we also do webinars, so we use them to like find people who should be speaking in this topic, or like what are you excited about now. There's a lot more to come. Right now, our huge focus is on we're doing an in-person conference at the end of April in Utah, and so that's our big push right now. And our editorial board is incredible. Like we say, like, hey, like we're looking for keynote speakers or presenters on these topics, and they're like, Ryan Abernathy, for example, is on our board. He's like, I was just at AMS. I saw this one guy. He's fantastic. You got to bring him in. So like, it's very much community led. That's how we've set it up. So
no, that's fantastic. I mean, I've been a enthusiastic watcher, I guess, of the commentary, and also the degree of acceptance from regular geospatial folk of this new idea. And it was kind of funny to see a bit of back talk, actually. Some people were basically saying, well, I'm a desktop native geo person. So what would you say?
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so to like a dyed-in-the-wool ArcGIS Pro user who loves a bit of desktop software and is quite partial to a shapefile, how would you approach educating them about the new possibilities that Cloud Native Geo offers?
I mean, it's fine. Like people are like, oh, like, are you gonna? We got to get rid of Esri. I'm like, Esri's fine. Like it has a great, huge community. They've, I mean, obviously created an entire industry and everything like that. So we're not like coming after desktop anything. In fact, I mean, Esri supports Stack, and in fact, the cloud optimized GeoTIFF, like when we created that at AWS, that was with Peter Becker from Esri. Like, he was really like one of the main people pushing for how we started hosting. Anyway, the point is like, nothing against Esri. However, I'll say for the desktop native geospatial crowd, it's probably already happened to them. Like they've encountered data that's too big for their device, and they have to do something in a cloud environment. If they're using ArcGIS Online, or if they're using ArcGIS, like whatever, some Esri product that is connecting to a Stack catalog that's hosted remotely, they're doing stuff that's cloud native. Like they're doing stuff that's enabled by the cloud already. And so for a lot of people, I hope it's just kind of seamless, but there are plenty of people out there that are like, they can't afford Esri or they don't want to use it for whatever reason. And the exciting thing is like now today, like they can build lots of really interesting stuff. But we want to accelerate that community and make, more things possible. So
this is in a way saying that big data wasn't just some bunch of hype.
It's not no, I mean, I got this from Tim O'Reilly. I mean, Tim O'Reilly's been like a huge influence, I guess, on everybody, but like on me, he defined cloud really well, which is as compute beyond the scale of a single device. And the geospatial world in particular is interesting in this way, in that we have massive volumes of data, right? We're flying satellites, we're running all sorts of environmental sensors, OpenStreetMap, these crazy projects that are like, they're producing volumes of data that most people they're not going to have it all locally. It doesn't make sense to move it over to networks all over the time. But then we also have the benefit, though, of that data being open, right? So there's like biomedical imagery, they produce tons of data, but it's not open, right? So they can't collaborate the way that we can. So no, like big data is not hype in the sense that like there's lots of data. To quote Ryan Abernathy again, this is years ago, he wrote some posts. He's like, big data is like anything over 100 gigabytes. Like, it's sort of like if you can't fit on your laptop, like that's big data. He said something like that in a blog post that I really liked. So
Okay, so the impression I'm getting is that it is a bunch of people with solid background in computer science and computing at scale,
yeah,
who are engaging in a lot of discussion in some formal contexts, like this conference in person. Did you say in April in Utah?
April 30th. It's awkward. It's April 30th to May 2nd. So very end of
Yep.
April.
Okay. Sounds really
Yeah.
exciting. I'd love to go. So it's a bunch of people who are, it seems like, in a deliberate, thoughtful way, coming together to come up with ways of working, methodologies for leveraging scalable compute for geospatial challenges, processing, presentation.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, there's some language I use to describe what we do. I mean, so the mission of the Cloud Native Geo Forum is to make geospatial data easier to access and use. Like that's the goal. It's not so much like let's get everybody into the cloud. It's like no, that's not the point. The point is how do we make geospatial data easier to access and use for everybody?
Okay.
And then the sort of the tagline for Cloud Native Geo is like where geospatial data users create the future together. And so the idea being like it really is a conference for practitioners, for people who like it's their job to touch data and to wrangle it, to get them together and talk about what's working, what's not working, with no vendor there, with no one being like, well, the answer is clearly Redshift or big or whatever, Um, it's a vendor neutral forum for the actual data users to come together and talk to each other and learn from each other.
Yep. Okay. I can't help myself. There's another thread here that I can
Sure.
highlight, which is from the episode with Whereabots.
Oh yeah.
I was actually I had a beer with Mo Sawat actually
Okay.
in San Francisco June when I went to a Whereabots meetup really about GeoParquet.
Oh
There's a
great.
whole
Oh yeah.
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 So I get the impression that companies like and initiatives like Apache Sedona, is it,
Yeah.
are in this realm where it's simply the size of the data warrants scalable or requires scalable compute. Otherwise, you give up.
That's right. Yeah. And so I mean like I mean the three I'm probably going to offend some people, but I mean I know like Whereabouts, Fused, Earthmover are all, pretty recently funded startups that I know well, and I know a lot of people there that I think are exemplary of this. Is that like everything I said about like object storage being like so powerful and everything like that, that's all true, but also like producing data that's optimized for that is hard, and requires, really sophisticated tools. Also, producing it reliably and in such a way that can be integrated with like enterprise systems and things like that takes a lot more than just, my sort of facile, like just put it in S3, it'll be fine. Um, I'm really glad these all these people are getting funded to figure this stuff out because the market really needs this kind of stuff.
Okay, so you mentioned Earthmover, Fused I've heard of, and Whereabouts.
Yeah.
Okay, those are some interesting new pathways to investigate for myself and listeners. Okay,
Yeah.
so I wasn't expecting this, but we seem to have managed the whole thing quite efficiently.
Crazy. Yeah.
I wanted to, I guess, tie things back to this example of a massive torrent of data verifying that EU citizens are okay to consume products from farms, I guess, outside of the EU where there's deforestation risk. So I guess what we've come from is, I guess, the topic in terms of global challenges was food security. How do this farming context in the EU, is it DR, deforestation risk? What's it called?
So the EUDR, it's the European Union Deforestation Regulation.
Okay, so what global challenge can we say that is addressing?
You could say deforestation.
Yeah, deforestation has to be a big one.
Huge problem. Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone from that global challenge to some examples of collaboration and data sharing. It seems like almost every almost transaction or purchase of a good, I'm just going to say a good, maybe services as well, but a good from one of these areas, it seems maybe almost all of them will have to be verified, and that verification involves hitting some massive database with a record, almost like a chain of custody, back to the harvesting event.
Right.
And the examples that you've
Supposedly.
given, Yeah, so you've got this group
Yeah.
of people who are participating in
Yeah.
the Cloud Native Geospatial Forum who are hashing out the methodologies to efficiently handle this torrent of data and analysis that goes with it, because it's about a place, so therefore our profession is involved. And you've mentioned Source Cooperative as, I guess, some tooling to assist with that chain of custody. Is that a summary that works?
That works. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I
Amazing.
like that vision. Yeah.
And if people want to participate more, head on over to Utah in 30th of April.
Absolutely. Get your tickets. They're flying off the shelves. But yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be great. You put tickets on a shelf? Do they fly? Tickets don't fly off shelves. Get your tickets.
Digital shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Jed.
Right.
It was a huge privilege, and I hope to be able to shake your hand for real.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, sounds good.